The sea was louder than the chains. It roared like it already knew their names. Hundreds of them stood on the shore, wrists bleeding, ankles swollen, eyes empty. Some had never seen the ocean before. Now it would be the last thing they would ever see. The ships waited. Wooden monsters bobbing on the waves, hungry for human cargo. The march was over, but the nightmare was not. They had survived the walk of no return only to meet the ocean. They were pushed forward. Men to one side, women to another, children separated without explanation. A mother screamed as her son was dragged away. A husband watched his wife disappear into a different line. There were no goodbyes, no last embrace, just the crack of a whip and the cold indifference of the captors. They were forced up a narrow plank and into the belly of the ship. Inside, the air was already wrong. It was thick, rotten, and wet with fear. They were forced below deck into a space not meant for living things, and that was when they understood the long, brutal walk had only been a preparation for a far greater horror. Below deck, there was no room to sit properly, no room to turn, no room to breathe. Bodies were arranged like cargo, shoulder to shoulder, chained together in long, suffocating rows. The ceiling was so low that grown men could not stand, forced into a permanent crouch. Darkness swallowed everything. The only light came when a hatch opened, and that was never for mercy. Days bled into weeks. Time lost all meaning. The smell became unbearable, a vile mix of vomit, blood, human waste, and the slow, creeping scent of death. The air itself felt heavy, poisoned. When someone died, they often remained chained to the living for hours, sometimes even days, a cold weight against a warm body, before being unceremoniously dragged away. A young boy stopped moving. His breathing had been shallow all day, his eyes distant. By nightfall, he was gone. The chain still bound him to the others, a final, cruel connection. In the morning, sailors came down, their faces grim. They unlocked the small, lifeless body and carried him up to the deck. The others listened, their hearts pounding in the suffocating silence. They heard the splash, a small sound almost lost in the vastness of the sea. But it was a sound they would never forget. That was when they realized the ocean was being fed. It wasn't just a barrier to cross, it was a hungry mouth waiting for its share of their sorrow. Halfway across the Atlantic, the sky turned black. The sea, once a flat, endless mirror, rose into angry, mountainous waves. The ship itself seemed to scream as its wooden frame groaned and cracked and ropes snapped like twigs. Below deck, the captives were thrown violently against one another. Chains cut deep into rough skin, and the sickening sound of bones breaking echoed in the darkness. Cold sea water poured in through the cracks, flooding the hold, chilling them to the bone. Some thought this was the end. Some even prayed for it. A final release from the torment. Above deck, the sailors, fighting for their own lives, made a terrible calculation. To save the ship, they had to lighten the load. The hatch creaked open, not for food or water, but for a different, more horrifying purpose. Several captives were dragged up from the darkness. They were not dead. They were weak, terrified, but alive. On the storm-lashed deck, they were pushed to the edge. And then, one by one, they were thrown into the raging sea. Their screams were swallowed by the wind. Their bodies were swallowed by the black water. The ocean did not argue. It simply took them, and so the Atlantic grew heavier, filled with stories that were never told, names that history never wrote down. When the storm finally passed, the ship continued its journey, but the air below deck had changed. There were fewer voices now, fewer heartbeats drumming in the dark. A chilling silence had settled over the survivors. They understood something profound and terrible in that silence. The sea was not just water. It was a graveyard, a moving cemetery stretching all the way from Africa to the Americas. It was sailing across an ocean of bones. Some historians estimate that millions of men, women, and children were thrown overboard during the transatlantic slave trade. Millions. The Atlantic Ocean is not empty. It holds their stories. It holds their pain. It remembers, and so must we. This was episode 2. If you are ready for episode 3, the auction block, type remember in the comments. because forgetting would mean they died twice. Thank you for watching.